Hail your leader! Hail! I am the genetic super soldier offspring of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un. I am Kim J-Il, and I'm the illest mother effing dictator you've ever seen. Today we're going to be talking about Propaganda, the classic from Edward Bernays. Now, we've all, I'm sure, heard of the book Propaganda and of probably Edward Bernays. But he is famous for certain campaigns in the 20s that promoted female smoking through branding cigarettes as a feminist torch of freedom for the United Fruit Company, Rockefeller, Procter Gamble, operations to overthrow the Guatemalan government in the 1950s. And this is not the only book, but he also worked with the ideas of people like Walter Lippmann, who was from the OSS, if I recall. And so what you have is this kind of convergence between the Office of Strategic Services, which is the predecessor to the CIA, created in 1942, and then the CIA in 1947, which becomes not what most people think. Most people think of the CIA as some sort of spy James Bond thing, but actually it's most heavily involved in culture creation, watching culture, watching the growth of trends and ideas. That's a big part of the CIA operations. And what we want to look at in this book is aspects that I think a lot of people miss. They think of, oh, Bernays did that thing with, cigarettes or whatever. Bernays sold the idea of breakfast requiring bacon and eggs, this kind of stuff, that you got to have those two together. But Bernays wrote about a lot more than that. Bernays also renamed the War Department the Department of Defense because it was more palatable, right? So what you have here is kind of a pioneering work in PR, public relations. And that's why this book is so important, is because it's not just the idea of a dictator using propaganda. We think of, Hitler, or we think of Stalin, or we think of Mao using propaganda posters and, the leader up there smiling and bestowing his benevolence upon the glob of the masses. But in fact, it's really at Madison Avenue, it's at Saks Fifth Avenue, it's at Wall Street that we find the heart of the work of propaganda, selling ideas. And what we're going to see is that for Bernays, propaganda is really, this book could be called not so much just propaganda, but maybe full spectrum propaganda. Full spectrum manipulation is essentially what this book is about. And that's where we begin to see the tie-in to the advertising world. Now, a lot of people who will talk about deception and culture creation, this kind of stuff, or who will talk about conspiracies or this or that, they don't talk about the ideas of advertising. Advertising is crucial to this whole aspect of our control system. Now, everybody's going to use propaganda. The idea goes back to the 70s with the Vatican and the idea of a congregation for the propagation of the faith, right? The propagandizing of the faith, or in a way kind of spreading, evangelizing, or apologetics even. But in Bernays' sense, it's going to take on a whole new meaning where we're not, some of those ideas are still there, but as Bernays argues, it's really a kind of aspect of rhetoric. Everybody in a sense is going to do propaganda because, if you believe you're right about something, you're going to try to convince other people that you're correct, right? So it's kind of a form of not just selling something, but also convincing people of ideas, not just selling your tube of toothpaste, not just, promoting this kind of cereal, or the promotion of that kind of cereal. If you remember those funky, nasty cereals. I do, because I grew up in the 80s. That's not just what propaganda and advertising is. It's also the selling of a whole idea. And it becomes a very fascinating kind of realm where you're also trying to convince people of a worldview. And this is where it gets really relevant to the stuff that we talk about in terms of philosophy. And that's why, of course, this is crucial in the Globalist Books series. And in fact, we have the famous quote at the beginning for any skeptic. I mean, I can't imagine anybody actually being a skeptic out there anymore. Some guy asked me on a comment yesterday, actually, why would they publish these books if this is a real conspiracy? Well, that very question actually operates on the incorrect assumption of how human beings operate. So there's such a thing as gaslighting. There's a lot of different techniques as to why things are in the public purview. But for one, most people don't read. So if you're the globalist, are you worried about publishing your book when most people don't read? I mean, the number of people that read is regularly is like 20%, I think, something like that. And that 20%, if I recall, reads like newspapers and mainstream media. So there's only a small percentage out of that 20% that actually read real content and information, which is what you're getting here at Jay's Analysis. So not a difficult book, about 150, 60 pages, 70 pages. You can knock that one out pretty quick. But we want to start with the most telling quote right away, which a lot of people are familiar with, but maybe you're not, so we're going to inform you. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate the unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggest, and are suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Democratic. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together in a smoothly functioning society. Our invisible governors are, in many cases, unaware of the identity of their fellow members in this inner cabinet. That's because it's compartmentalized, right, in different sections and different jobs and functions, right? The general is over here planning NATO strategy, and then the CIA Wall Street guy is over here doing hedge fund stuff, and then you've got, Rockefeller over here, reorganizing the planet. I mean, it's just insane, really, that when you see this stuff, you realize that this is how the whole planet works. So, the way this works at Jay's Analysis, of course, is that you get the beginning section here where I discuss this stuff for free. And then if you want to go deeper into the lecture, you subscribe at Jay's Analysis for $4.95 a month or for $60 a year for the full talks, lectures, interviews, etc. You can also get my book, Esoteric Hollywood, signed copies at my website for $60 out of the U.S., $30 inside the U.S. That's for shipping fees, of course. You can also check out my show at Gaia.com, Hollywood Decoded, with myself and Jay Widener, where we decode the biggest films in an unparalleled way. So as we said, though, that right away here you have an insider of sorts, maybe not the most powerful guy, but a guy who worked for the establishment, who isn't really a Democrat. He's one of these guys like Bertrand Russell or like Huxley, who talks up democracy and leftist ideas. But of course, here he is at the beginning, kind of revelation of the method, telling you, no, democracies aren't run by people. Don't be naive. Democracies are run by invisible elite billionaires, essentially. The ones who have the money, power, and resources to control the banks, to control markets, to control public opinion, to select presidents, as Bernays says, to select political candidates, to buy political candidates, to manufacture and traffic in arms and drugs, etc. He says, a trifling fraction of our 120 million people at the time that he was writing this in 1928 understand the actual process of social patterns of the masses, right? And that's probably still the same today. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, this elite, and who harness the old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. So the invisible government, as he goes on to say, binds you and it guides you. And what does it use? It uses mass media. It uses political parties. And it uses Hollywood. That's why I wrote my book. And you'll find a lot more of this in Esoteric Hollywood, as you see up here, which you can get, as I said, at my site. And the sequel will be out, hopefully, in the next few months, Esoteric Hollywood, the sequel. So right away you have the admission from this father of modern advertising, father of propaganda, citing all these OSS guys, Walter Lippmann, etc., advertising guys, executive PR company guys, saying that that's the invisible government people who make the system go and steer it. Now they have above them, of course, the very wealthy billionaire, trillionaire class that tends to direct them. And that's how society works. That's the real world, whether you accept it or not. Now, who's behind advertising? Well, this arose out of World War II strategies, modern advertising, out of World War II strategies of propaganda and psyops. So that's why I will discuss psychological warfare and these topics, at my site extensively in many articles and in my book and so forth, because there's a direct transition from wartime propaganda into advertising, because it's the same principle, selling people on your idea, right? If you're the victorious army, you want to convince the other population that you're the good guy. That's essentially the whole purpose of the info war. If you are a company and you want to mold, manipulate, steer public opinion, you want to convince your market and expand that market to believing that your product is the good guy, right? Same principle as psychological warfare. And who do we have right away? H.G. Wells is who he cites right away, who was, of course, a master propagandist, right? We could see H.G. Wells actually as kind of a pre-Bernays. And, of course, Bernays, as we said, relative of Sigmund Freud. And that's why Bernays will understand the sexual impulse in regards to advertising. That's why you see sex. If you get this Cadillac, you're going to have all these chicks, which is not true, but the idea of sex and advertising, right, that has its origins in these Freudian principles and techniques and experiments. A lot of this is social experiments too. Let's not forget that aspect. So anyway, this is the first introductory section, the kind of brief summation of the book. If you want to go deep into the book, we're going to do that in the next hour at Jay's Analysis. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe here to the channel where you get regular interviews, audios, and videos, and so forth. Also, spread the videos. I appreciate that. Really trying to get my YouTube video to 20,000, or my channel to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's possible. We're almost there, approaching 18,000. So please spread the videos on social media. Of course, Facebook continues to censor me, so I can't do anything on Facebook. So it would help me if you spread my videos on Facebook. So check out jaysanalysis.com and watch for the next part of this video. And also check out the rest of the Globalist book series, right? We've done a whole bunch of people: Arthur Koestler, Miles Copeland, Carol Quigley, Bertrand Russell, and H.G. Wells. And we're going to continue doing Globalist books. And hopefully this will educate, wake a lot of people up to these stupid old tricks, and don't fall for the con men.